well-heeled people. The other thing is that he did emerge as the second largest party in Karachi, the second largest party in Punjab, made very deep inroads in places where nobody imagined he could make inroads, and he emerged as the single largest party in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Balochistan is another matter altogether, and we can talk about the Balochistan results later on. So, you know, to give him his due, he did make a huge impact. Even the manner in which Nawaz Sharif approached this election was, you know, till about a year and a half back, Nawaz Sharif was sitting pretty, very comfortable that, you know, he's just going to slide into power. Imran Khan made him work for every vote he got. You know, that is the kind of scare he put into him. To give him his due, he managed to do all of that. Plus, he punctured the Imran Khan tsunami by, you know, some very grand projects, and that is something for which Nawaz Sharif is very famous. You know, he has this Taj Mahal complex. In every tenure, he presents Pakistan with its own white elephant. So this time it's that what is called the Jangla bus service or the metro bus service. In his last tenure, it was the motorway. So he gives these grand projects which are very which have very high visibility and, you know, are seen as models of development. So he managed to do that, attracted votes because of that, because it showed that his government was working. The government in Punjab was relatively efficient when you compare it to the other governments. And then what really went in Nawaz Sharif's favor was that Asif Zardari's calculations that his vote bank is fixed and it's not going to move. So he was thinking that, you know, he would get his 25-30% chunk, and the so-called right-wing vote would get split between Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif. That didn't happen, and it was in fact the People's Party vote which got whittled down very badly. So,
well, obviously the economy is in such shambles in Pakistan. It's in such a mess. In fact, according to somebody who came from Pakistan the other day, there are power cuts going into 18 hours a day in many parts of Pakistan. And all these things will need immediate attention, because people are not going to give 5 years before there is some little improvement in their living conditions. Apart from the economy, which is a supply from neighboring states in India to Pakistan to tide over their immediate difficulties, apart from the economy, I think the next biggest challenge unquestionably is law and order. The extent, the scale of violence can't go on. This is something which is consuming Pakistan with each passing day, and the very existence of the state of Pakistan now depends on the success which this government can achieve in controlling the violent elements in Pakistan. And post-Afghanistan, post-US withdrawal from Afghanistan, NATO withdrawal, I think this is going to be an even bigger challenge for the new government. And thirdly, of course, is the fact that the military-civil equation. Now, so far, people have said that the army is quite happy, the military is quite happy to see a democratically elected government continue the process. But I'm not sure that it is going to be as simple as that, because the crucial decisions which Nawaz Sharif is going to be, if he is a Prime Minister, is going to be taking, will concern relations with India, which has been the army's prerogative, concern relations with the US.
I don't know that this is going to really play out in the manner which Nawaz Sharif is doing. Is he overreaching himself? Is he, you know, has this overconfidence gone into his head, which will destabilize the government? So these kind of questions have begun to plague many people. But having said that, I think there is a lot of things that Nawaz Sharif would be expected to do. Power, as Mr. Ram has pointed out, is the most serious issue. In fact, I remember watching an interview of his daughter, and she says the first thing her dad is going to do is to fix the power crisis, which is, as he said, is 18 hours a day load shedding takes place. And the next thing is that the looming threat the Pakistan Taliban provides. They have been mercilessly killing their troops, their innocent civilians. And recently, when you had the army, you can say some event which took place, where I think being met, and especially pertaining to greater Islamization of the society. And let's see how Mr. Nawaz Sharif handles that.
Right, so a range of challenges there ahead of him. Mr. Sareen, out of the mess that Mr. Sharif has inherited, in his own words, what do you think would be the biggest challenge?
I think all of them, and I don't see. I think the biggest challenge for him would be where does he start from. You can't fix the energy situation piecemeal. It's very closely linked with the rest of the economy. It's very closely linked with, for example, center-state relations. After the 18th Amendment, you know, the way gas allocations are to be done, a whole lot of other things have changed. So how does he manage the center state to manage his energy crisis? Then it's a question of if, for example, there are huge subsidies being given, and which is what is causing much of the problem. How does he end the subsidies? If he ends the subsidies, then is he going to trigger civil unrest? Because that would mean that tariffs would go up by almost 50%, some say even 100%. Electricity as it is very expensive in Pakistan because
Welcome back to Public Forum. We are discussing the outcome of the election in Pakistan. Mr. Ram, I'll continue with you. We know Nawaz Sharif had made it clear in the election campaign that economy is going to be his priority, but he had also made it clear that he is going to negotiate with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. He is in fact known to be soft on the Taliban. In fact, Imran Khan too believes in the same approach. What can we expect then, because this is of consequence to us as well?
You know, they're all speaking in different voices. I don't think that they have a policy which can be articulated at this point of time, because Tehreek-e-Taliban may also not be so willing to negotiate with the establishment in Islamabad. And in any case, this is a contradiction in terms. It's going to be a messy affair, a difficult affair, but certainly it's going to be one of their domestic policy priorities.
Mr. Kapoor, that's going to be a key challenge ahead, how Nawaz Sharif deals with the Taliban.
I think so. It's going to be a very, very serious issue. And the problem with the domestic Taliban or Pakistani Taliban, that they don't have a very established leadership. The Pakistan government would not even know whom to deal with. I think Pakistan Army tried in the early days to engage with them. It didn't really work out. It's very nebulous, exactly, the organization structure, the leadership, how it conducts itself. The only thing that the Pakistanis know and the Pakistani military knows that they were rather vicious. Many of them are very well trained, and it's a fallout of whatever happened, the Lal Masjid, face-off which happened with the Pakistani army. But since then, it's a monster which has become rather big, and it's begun to influence Pakistani politics to settle. Although you have Mr. Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif talking the same way about how they will go about it.
Right.
But I don't think there are very easy solutions to it, because also for Mr. Imran Khan, he's saying that he's going to stop drone attacks in the area where he's got most of the seas in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But how will that happen? Although US has been in certain ways violating its own laws when it's been making these drone attacks, but Pakistan government has tacitly, or even I think there's an agreement about allowing them to. Bill Clinton came in because he was the one who bailed him out, when he was incarcerated by Mr. President, by General Parvez Musharraf. So that is why Bill Clinton's name came up. But President Obama, how will he deal with it? So these are many issues, which are linked, as Sushant had said, the domestic policy, foreign policy, and your own whole lot of problems, whether your economy or your power crisis, they are all interwoven with each other. And then you have the problem of Balochistan. How do you deal with that? I mean, all political parties in Pakistan don't want to talk about it, especially the main ones. And
the sense of
the voter
alienation
turnout
is
has
growing
been very
stronger.
poor. The Taliban was, I think, very excessive in the way they went about bashing up the Awami National Party, ANP. Mr. Wali Khan also lost. Wali Khan lost. So all those issues, I think, would have a bearing about the unity, the stability of the country.
Right. Mr. Sareen, the big worry clearly is how Mr. Sharif is going to deal with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, because both Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif are open to talks with the Taliban. In fact, Imran Khan also believes in a truth and reconciliation with his people. He believes not all tribals are militants.
Yeah, but you know, there is absolutely no clarity. Has more or less atrophied. So you know, he had a slight, completely vague kind of an attitude towards this whole problem. There was no clarity in his mind. The only thing he was clear about was that the current policy is not working. Okay, fine, one would give him that it is not working. But the reason why the current policy is not working is because it's an ambivalent policy. You know, at one level you talk about the good guys, the good Taliban, then you talk about the bad Taliban, then the whole thing gets mixed up because you say the Afghan Taliban are the nice guys, but the Afghan Taliban have very close links with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also with the Haqqani network, which is your you know, baby, and the Haqqani network exactly you wish to approach this issue. At the level of the state, at the level of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, again, he says that, look, you know, maybe we should explore this dialogue option. Now, the point is that the dialogue option has been explored in the past, and what has invariably happened is that the Taliban have used a dialogue, managed to use that space which is created to regroup, to rearm themselves, to re-establish themselves in places from where they have been expelled with great difficulty. So you want to go back down that path once again, feel free to do it. But the problem with this, on this whole Taliban and this terrorism front, is that it's also very closely linked with the economy.
Right.
Because if you have such a disturbed law and order situation, you have terrorism and bomb blasts happening all over the place, who is ever going to come and invest in your country?
Right.
Your own investor is actually running away. So, you know, everything then gets mixed up. And the shocking part is that having lost over 50,000 people in this war, and they're still not sure whether it's their war or it's not their war. Now, Nawaz Sharif is not sure whether it's his war or it's not his war. Kiani is sure that it is his war. So that then creates this civil war
As well. On that note, it's time for us to slip into a break in the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back with the final segment of the show, where we discuss the implications of this verdict for India-Pakistan relations. Welcome back to Public Forum. We are talking about the outcome of the election in Pakistan. Mr. Ram, speaking of implications for India now, India has welcomed a verdict in Pakistan. Mr. Nawaz Sharif is perceived to be an India-friendly leader. He's stated his intention of picking up the threads of the 1999 peace process. What can we expect?
You know, there is so much of hype about this that I am worried, I'm concerned. Frankly speaking, no leader in Pakistan can go beyond the parameters which are already established in terms of relations with India. While it's good to have expectations, while it's good to hope that things will improve, I think one must be very cautious about the way and the direction in which the new policy evolves. There is no mistake. While we should look forward, we should even respond to his overtures, should there be any, but we should not have any exaggerated expectations, certainly not in the short run.
Okay.
If he is able to consolidate his position within the country, maybe some good results will follow. But that is a function of so many variables which we cannot even anticipate at this point of time. So I would hold my judgment. I'll be careful, cautiously optimistic, but not euphoric about the prospects.
Mr. Kapoor, would you agree?
I think I would be. I mean, the two tests of relationship with Pakistan would be whether the terror infrastructure is dismantled,
Right.
and secondly, how does Pakistan, countenance the Kashmir issue. So where the terror infrastructure is concerned, I think infiltration is down, but I don't think the infrastructure has been demolished or been dismantled. Otherwise, they'll have to take it up or something of that nature. So if these people get very aggressive about Kashmir, then it would, it be a challenge for India, Indian Army, and how they deal with it. In fact, I returned from Kashmir a few days back, and this was before the results came out. And the graffiti was there on the walls of Srinagar in a few places, where they were saying welcome Taliban, because there is some expectation that Taliban would start having sway over Pakistani politics, and they are the ones who start infiltrating into Kashmir, although it's too much, too far-fetched at the moment. But there is a certain kind of expectation about what the support that Nawaz Sharif has got will do to his Kashmir and other ventures which ISI has been sustaining for many years.
Also, the way they have been actively cultivating hatred against
came apart, and that is why the history books had to be written in a manner where India was demonized, and India was to be the country that
whole terrorism question merely to bringing the guilty of 2611 to book. That is only a subset of this larger equation. And when Sanjay talks about dismantling the terror infrastructure, I think that's the real question.
Right.
Does he move forward on that? Does he even take the first steps to do that? I think it's a difficult thing, because if you look at the way his brother capital, where it is in a position to actually reciprocate to any overtures which come from the Pakistani side. And then in about 2 or 3 months' time, the election season will start out here, and then you go into election mode. So for about a year, I don't see anything major take place.
Okay.
That will also give us enough time, whichever government comes to power in Delhi after the next election, that also gives the Indian establishment time to see whether Nawaz Sharif is moving in a direction where we get some satisfaction. And then finally, and that's the big question, his attitude towards India insofar as Afghanistan is concerned.
Right.
There has been some talk in some back channel, not official but unofficial kind, that can India and Pakistan work together to stabilize Afghanistan? Now, if something like that was to happen, that could become a game changer.
Okay.
But will it happen? I have serious doubts, because like Mr. Ram said, there are certain constraints, inbuilt constraints on Mr. Nawaz Sharif.
Absolutely. I think the next few weeks are going to be very difficult weeks for Pakistan. Not only the government formation, but also the principal actors who will be pursuing the policy which he has promised to implement in the coming years. We'll have to wait and watch.
Right, and very quickly, an issue that I couldn't manage to touch upon earlier, Mr. Kapoor, how he's going to handle the growing intolerance in the Pakistani society. I'm talking about the attacks on religious minorities, on Shias as well.
The tragedy is that both these parties never really tried to win the votes of the Shias or the Ahmadiyas and all that. So it's very clear that they do not want to actually make an attempt also. It's definitely the Sunni supremacy which is visible there. It is maybe driven by the influence Saudi Arabia and Qatar has in these parts, or for whatever reason that the Sunnis are more